The owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it.
All right, everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's Wednesday, March 9th, and I've been focusing a lot recently on the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Now, the reason I've been focusing so much on it is because when you actually go and read that definition, it makes it so you can't question Israel, you can't question Jewish influence, and you most certainly can't question the Holocaust. If you don't believe me, please go read it yourself. Now, this specific definition, which is supposed to be non-legally binding, is being adopted seemingly in a concerted effort, a rush recently, by all sorts of different governments and government agencies. And the reason they're adopting it is because they want to use that definition to help them better police hate crimes and online speech. Now, this could be used as a carte blanche to just silence any dissent, questioning of anybody in power, and that's what I think they're doing. So in this video, I'm going to show you just who's behind this, the connections that can be made very easily, and some good points of research for you to actually look into on your own if you get the time. So this news came out today. European Council adopts measures to tackle racism, anti-Semitism. It says the European Council recently announced measures it will adopt to combat racism and anti-Semitism, which include urging social media companies to remove racist and anti-Semitic hate speech and adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism. These efforts, which are officially called conclusions, also call on European Union member states to strengthen the ability of their national and judicial authorities to prosecute illegal online racist and anti-Semitic hate crime and hate speech, including by establishing national online monitoring centers and platforms where people can report hateful content. World Jewish Congress President Ronald S. Lauder applauded the measures in a statement released on Thursday. I'm going to show you why he's important. The just released conclusions demonstrate that France and the entire leadership of the European Union recognize the danger that anti-Semitism poses to the Jewish people and society at large, said Lauder. We must never be passive or negligent in combating anti-Semitism or other forms of bigotry. He added that, as anti-Semitism continues to surge across Europe, the Council's commitment to fighting the world's oldest hatred is more critical than ever. So who's Ronald Lauder? Now, if you load the worldjewishcongress.org website, one of the first things you're going to see is a picture of Ronald Lauder, the president, but you're also going to see a picture of David de Rothschild, the chairman. Now, there's a lot of connections that can be made between the Rothschild family and Mr. Lauder. The reason why that's important is because when you look at the narrative for the Holocaust, it was crucial for the establishment of Israel. It's arguable that Israel wouldn't be where it is today if it didn't have that propaganda push telling everyone that 6 million Jews got gassed. When you look into the founding of Israel and who was responsible as it exists today, the Rothschild family arguably played the largest role. They did this because they want to use it as their independent nation state from which they could operate as they wage economic war against all their enemies. But that's not even why I wanted to show you this. What's important is at the top. All Jews are responsible one to another. This is one of the first things you see on this Ronald Lauder World Jewish Congress website. Well, why is that important? When you go to the IHRA website, you can see very clearly that an example of anti-Semitism they use in their definition is accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interest of their own nations. Well, what did we just read as one of the first things here? All Jews are responsible one to another. Okay? Ronald Lauder, the guy who's applauding people for adopting this definition, says it himself. All Jews are responsible one to another, okay? But you can't accuse Jews of being more loyal to Israel or to each other than their own nations because that's anti-Semitic. This is an article from the Jewish Voice in 2018, which shows another connection between Ron Lauder and the Rothschild family, but it also serves the dual purpose of illustrating just how key the Rothschilds were in establishing the nation-state of Israel. So I want you to pay attention to this one paragraph right here. Now, this is Ronald Lauder saying this. Each year, the WJC presents the Theodor Herzl Award, the highest honor in the Jewish world today, to a notable statesman or other influential figure in appreciation of his or her dedication to the Jewish people. This year is different. Instead of honoring a single individual, we are honoring one family, the Rothschilds, who have rarely been recognized publicly for all they have done, Ambassador Lauder said. Maybe that's because they own the media. The modern state of Israel was created by Jewish heroes who were led by extraordinary leaders such as Herzl, Ben-Gurion, and Weizmann. But Israel would never have been born without the financial support of Jews everywhere. There is, however, one family that stands above all others, the Rothschild family, who laid the very foundation of the Jewish homeland. Across the world, members of the Rothschild family contributed tremendously to the lives and well-being of Jews, both in Israel and in the diaspora. So it seems like the Rothschilds have a vested interest in protecting this Holocaust narrative and preventing quote-unquote anti-Semitism from spreading, even if that means limiting your freedom of speech. Now, it's not just the Holocaust narrative that this man and this family have a vested interest in protecting, it's also the narrative for 9/11 because both were heavily involved. Now, this is off Christopher Bolin's website, bolinbooks.com. This was put out May 26, 2019. 9/11, the Lauder-Rothschild Connection. Now, Christopher Bolin is a great researcher. He doesn't get enough credit. Please check out his book, Solving 9/11. Now, this part right here is the most important that you need to pay attention to. The privatization of the World Trade Center involved Ronald Lauder, a high-level Zionist with close ties to the Rothschild family, one of whom served at the highest levels of Israel's Military Intelligence Directorate. Ronald Lauder headed the two commissions under Governor George Pataki that pushed for the privatization of the World Trade Center, the New York State Commission of Privatization, and the New York State Research Council on Privatization. Lauder was the driving force behind the effort to privatize the World Trade Center, which resulted in Larry Silverstein, a fellow Zionist, getting the 99-year lease of the Twin Towers in July 2001. And we all know what happened then, and we all know who collected that insurance. But wait, it gets even weirder. So this is the Stewart International Airport Wikipedia page. In 1994, George Pataki campaigned on improving efficiencies by privatizing money-losing state projects. That's right, the same George Pataki that we just read about who helped privatize the World Trade Center. Ronald Lauder, who had written a book about European successes in privatizations, suggested Stewart be privatized. Pataki created the New York State Council on Privatization and appointed Lauder its chair. Okay, now pay attention to this right here. 2 years later, after approval by the state's attorney general and comptroller, as well as the FAA and the carriers, the contract was awarded to the UK-based National Express plc, the only one of the 5 bidders to have declined to present at a special forum organized a week prior to award, and also a company Lauder had praised in his book for its success with the UK's national bus service and subsequent acquisition of East Midlands Airport, leading to some suspicions that the state had always intended to give them the airport from the beginning. NEG was prepared to pay $35 million for the lease, and after working out the details, Pataki handed over a ceremonial key at the passenger terminal in late 2000. Well, why is that important? Well, when you decide to look into the flight paths that the planes took that day, it becomes very curious indeed. This is off 911anomalies.wordpress.org. It was put out June 2007. 9/11 flight paths in Stewart Air Base. American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175 were the two airplanes that hit the World Trade Center towers on 9/11. The 9/11 Commission report published the flight paths of both airplanes. The flight paths originate from Boston and cross again when they meet New York City. You can click it right here. Here's one of them. And here's the other. Point A is the approximate location of the overlap. Point A is the location of New Windsor, New York. This also happens to be the location of Stewart Air National Guard Base, aka Stewart International Airport. So again, check it out. Not only did American Airlines 11 and United Airlines 175 both fly over New Windsor, New York, but they both flew over it at the same time, supposedly almost crashing into each other. This is an unlikely coincidence, since it would be far more likely that if the paths taken from Boston to New York crossed, that the planes would not cross paths at the same time. This occurred approximately at 8:36 a.m. Now you can go and read the rest of this article, but it also talks about how the transponders were turned off. Seems awfully convenient if you were going to swap those planes out with ones that had explosives, maybe something that was remote controlled perhaps. So now you know who's behind this push to adopt this IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and why. And remember, all Jews are responsible one to another, but don't you dare ever say that because that would be anti-Semitic.